Hey everyone, my name is David Rao and I'm the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Pinterest, a variety of places when you search for my name, David Rao, or Make Moments Matter. I'm so excited you decided to join me tonight. Tonight I'm going to be talking about concerts, how to prepare for them, how to promote them, what to do during the concert, what to do after the concert, all sorts of things, because I feel like all of us all the time are trying to think about what are we going to do next, or how are we going to change things, or what could we do different. And so I've asked a lot of folks over the last week on my Facebook page. I asked folks for questions and thoughts and things that they want to talk about, and I've compiled a bunch of those things. We're going to talk about them tonight. That's coming up in just a second. Before we get there, if you see me talk about a book or a resource or something that you're like, that's really cool, and you want to know more, I have a whole page on my blog dedicated to all the things I talk about in these videos. You can click the link at the direct link at the bottom of whatever caption for whatever place you're watching or listening, or you can go to my blog makemomentsmatter.org and you can click on the video tab. Okay, and also I also mentioned, like, I asked people what do they want to learn about tonight, or what do they want to talk about, or what do they want to discuss, and I asked that in my Facebook group. If you can go join if you want. Every Moment Matters music education community. Come join us. It's a great place to ask questions and to talk together and learn together. Okay, so before I talk about concerts, I want to mention, because I shared about it on my social media this last week, but I wanted to just sort of show you. So I, before spring break, had to have a sub, and I always stress out about subs. So I've made, over spring break, I made 6 more resources to use for subs, because I had this set of resources that I really liked called a book companion, where like for every book about a musician or a musical topic, it has a PowerPoint presentation that talks about the artist and their life and their vocabulary that goes along with it. And it has links to videos, and it has worksheets, and it has coloring pages, all sorts of stuff, so that I can use a book and pair it, and then a sub can take it however they want. And I made 6 sets over break. 3 I shared about last week, but I want to share 3 more because these books I already have all of them in my library, but I bet a lot of you have them too. So one of the books that I did is this one called Dancing Hands. If you've not read this book by Margarita Engel, you should get it. Even if you don't get my resource to go with it, this is such a great, amazing book. It's about Teresa Carreño, who was a pianist and composer and singer and conductor. She lived and performed around the time of the American Civil War. Just like a beautiful, beautiful story and amazing, gorgeous illustrations. She actually went and played for Abraham Lincoln in the White House right after his son had just died. And the story that it tells is just totally amazing. So this is the first book that I did, or one of the books I did. And so along with that, what I'll leave for a sub is this little page that gives like directions and ideas about what they could do. There are coloring pages. There are worksheets if they want to use it for maybe an older grade or something. And so all of this, and actually I'll show you in the folder. So this goes into my, filing cabinet that marks subtub on the front. And so there's this little folder, and in it are basically 2 sets, like 2 class sets worth of the worksheets. So like the coloring pages, the worksheets, all of that stuff. And then I put a copy of the book in there too, so that the sub can just pull it out and use it. And it says on here, it says suggested grades 2 through 5, but I think depending on how you use the resource, it can be used for a variety of different grades. But it's so nice to now like have this just sitting in my file cabinet that I can just pull and use whenever I need it. This is a great book. A lot of people probably already have. 2 more sets that I made just recently are a set for this book, Little Melba and Her Big Trombone, about Melba Liston and how she wanted to play trombone, and then she became a really amazing trombone player. She played with like all these amazing artists, and then also started arranging music, and a lot of her arrangements became really, really popular. And she played around the world, and her music is still being played today. So there's a whole file folder of stuff for that book as well. Oh, and she's from Kansas City originally. Woohoo, go Kansas City. And then the last book in the set, this is the 9th one of these that I made, is Dizzy. This book by, this is by Jonah Winter. Little Melba, I forgot to mention, was written by Catherine Russell Brown. Dizzy's written by Jonah Winter, and this one tells the story of Dizzy Gillespie and his life and like some of the hardships he went through and all the things that he overcame in his life, and just tells a lot about Dizzy Gillespie. Super cool book. And so this is another one that I created a set for, so I can just put those in in my file cabinet and then pull them out as I need them. Someone asked me right before I went live, someone asked on my Instagram, they're like, so that picture you took of your drawer, is that just for emergency subs? And I'm like, it could be, but I like having, I find that like if I know that I'm going to be out the next day, if I'm sick, or like if I know I'm going to be out for a conference or something in a few days, I get so stressed, especially if it's like a conference I know I'm leaving or going somewhere. I have to, pack all my clothes. I have to plan what I'm going to do there. Am I presenting? Do I have to bring stuff for that? And then sub stuff, and so much. So I find that if I, at this point in my life when I do not have an imminent sub, if I start planning some of these resources now, it's so much easier later when I'm trying to actually pull all that stuff out for a sub. So that's why I went in today on one of our professional development days and work days, and I printed out a bunch of stuff, a couple class sets of each thing that I want for each of these books, so that when I'm ready to use them, I'm going to just pull them out and use them. And I'm not running to the copier or where did I put that original or whatever. I know where all of it is. So I just took it and I printed it all out. I put it in there. I actually went on betterworldbooks.com, which is a used book website. And I got extra copies of each of these books. So I have them on my bookshelf, but then for another $3.95, now I have an extra copy of Dizzy that just sits in with the sub stuff. And so, again, it just makes it easier so I'm not rushing around and not stressing out when I need to be prepping for a sub. Or what if it's, COVID, when it was you can't come back in the building. Well, what would I do? So I had this whole file cabinet full of stuff that you can just pull and use as needed. Anyway, I wanted to share about these because they're new, and why not have more resources for subs? Because it's stressful. I mean, honestly, if the sub wanted, they could pull one of these for K1, one for 2, 3, one for 4, 5. I mean, they could do one book for K through 2 and one for 3 through 5, depending on how they use the resource. And so it's nice to just have that sitting in the cabinet ready to go. Anyway, wanted to share about that in case you want another sub resource. All right, let's talk about concerts. I have 3 coming up in the next month. Because, I had them planned, they were all spread out, it was going to be great, and then COVID and all these changes, and we had to change the way we did stuff in the middle of the year, so it's now they're all in the span of a month and a half. Woohoo! It's going to be fine. So, what I want to talk about today is I want to talk a little bit about the planning of how do you plan for a concert, what do you put in a concert, how do you plan for that. Then I want to talk about promoting the concert, getting the word out to parents, because there are a lot of fun, exciting ways to do that. I want to talk about some things you can do during the concert to help your connections with parents and to make good connections with your community, honestly. And then run through a list of questions. Y'all gave me some great questions to talk about. Not that I have all the answers, but I can tell you here's what I think, or here's what I would do, or here's what I learned from so-and-so. And so we're going to try and spend as much time on those as we can. If you're watching live right now and you have questions, put those questions in the chat. And if I don't have somebody else who's already asked that question or said I'll try and get to all the things that come up now too. Okay, so how do you plan for a concert? Great question. I think that it really depends, and I don't think that there is one correct answer. I think that there are a lot of possible answers for that. So the first thing I'll say is that when I plan for a concert, I try and think less of the exact set. I try and think a year out. I try and look ahead. So I'm thinking about next year's concerts already. I start thinking about different grade levels, what would be appropriate to sing or perform for those grade levels. And I try and think about a theme. So this year, my themes for my concerts were 4th grade had a patriotic theme. 5th grade was a December concert. We did December Around the World. 1st grade is doing a concert around the theme of a zoo. 2nd grade is doing a concert around a theme of the ocean. 3rd grade is doing a concert around an international sort of a theme, but it's international folk dance. So taking those themes, I started to, a year ago, started pulling and looking and trying to find songs and games and things that fit that things that could be adapted to use for a performance for parents. So the nice thing about that ahead of time is that like you can start building up a list of possible songs and things that you could use to share in that concert. So already I know next year my theme for first grade is going to be going to the farm. I don't have a name for it yet. Like it's not like farm fun or what. Like I don't have like the title of the concert, but I know it's going to be about going to a farm. So I'm already starting to pull any songs that I think are fun, that are new or different, based around a farm, based around farm animals or whatever. I try and have all of that. I'm starting to pull all of that. So like what I do is I have this very amazing, very thorough page here that just says second grade at the top. Second grade, ocean. And then I just start like writing out, okay, I could do this or this or this. And then through the year, as I'm like coming up with stuff, or if I go to a workshop and I hear a new song, or if I'm going to a place and I find another option, then I pull that thing and I write it on my list. Let me see if this helps. Sorry, Instagram has been paused because there's something going on. So sorry, I had to just fix that. Hopefully they reconnect. So I just sort of pull all the things in one place. And then as I'm going through the year, I pull them out and rearrange and reorder. And I think, oh, I don't want this other one. I want this one instead. So I just try and pull all those resources together as I go around a theme. You could go for something very specific or not. It sort of is up to you. So an example of that. So like I knew my second grade was going to be an ocean theme. And I'd done ocean things in the past. So one of the things I pulled out was years and years ago, I did a kindergarten first grade program called Overboard. And so I pulled all the songs out of there that I thought that I had used before and what might work well. And I started just pulling all of that together. Pulled out things I could use, set aside things that I couldn't. I went to a couple books I really love. There's this book by Lynn Kleiner called Songs of the Sea. I know I've shared about this before, but it's a really cool book called Songs of the Sea. It has some really great resources in it. Some things I would use and some things I wouldn't. So I started pulling those things out, remembering those, keeping those out. Then along the way, a couple years ago, I did another concert called Commotion in the Ocean. This is a book by Giles Andre. And as I was prepping for that concert, I was looking for a book or something to sort of base the concert around. And this was a great book to use. So what I did at that concert, what I sort of hope to emulate again in this coming concert is take the book and use it as inspiration. So we'd read a couple pages and then sing a song that matches. And then read a couple pages and sing a song that matches. Or read a couple pages and sing again something that matches. So that's sort of my plan for the song coming up. But knowing that there's an ocean theme, I started pulling ocean books, things that sort of matched. Or knowing that there's an ocean theme, I started pulling this and that and something else, all things that sort of would go together along that ocean theme. Is it a perfect way to do this? No, but I think that if you plan far enough out and you start preparing far enough out, that as you come across things as you go, you might bump one thing and pull another or whatever. And it's a way to sort of gather all your materials way ahead of time. So I try and keep that theme general to start. So like ocean, that's a nice general theme, or farm or space or kindness or whatever. I try and pull that all together and put it in one place. Or sorry, Instagram's being weird. I'm trying to fix it as I'm talking. I try and pull all those songs and things together loosely based around a theme, and then I know that I can always I can. Sorry, I'm just going to shut it off and turn it back on. I start to just have a general theme because then I can be more specific later. But if I start with something really, really specific, like this one book, I mean, sometimes that works, but other times it's nice to just have, options. Okay, so sometimes I'll also go to people and say, hey, you did a concert based around X, Y, and Z. Hey, I know you've done such and such a thing. Tell me about that. Tell me how that worked for you. And so I'll say another thing that I learned from professors, friends, is beg, borrow, and steal. Ask people what they've done. Ask how it's worked for them. Ask what they, what they loved, what they didn't love, and then see if there's some way that you can adapt that, pull that, use that. So for sometimes I've gone and I've said like, ooh, that's a really cool book. I want to use it, but I'm going to change these 4 or 5 things. Or, oh, I really like that idea, but I'm going to go slightly a different way. And so I ask friends what they've done. I ask them what they're doing. And I sort of just take that and think about that as, as I'm planning for a show. So beg, borrow, and steal. Ask for set lists. Ask for books that they've used for inspiration. Ask for whatever, just sort of give you ideas as you're planning and preparing. Okay, and then let's see. Oh yeah, one more thing. As I always try and go for variety in the show. So as I'm thinking about a concert, I try and think about like, can I do something with instruments? Can I do something with movement? Can I do something, some songs? Can I do some other things where kids are involved, or where we use a song or a game from the classroom that we've done before? What can I do to sort of showcase things that we've done in the classroom or showcase our learning? And I find that like the more variety I have, the better the concerts tend to be. I find that if I just have one where it's like, you just stand and sing, well, those get really boring for me and for students. They're harder for me to prepare. I don't feel like they show off my students as much as I would like. And so I try and have some good variety so that it's not just all one kind of thing, not just all kids standing on the risers, or not just all kids whatever. I try and have a little bit of variety as I'm preparing. Okay, let's talk about promoting your concert. Before I do that, Erin just mentioned on Facebook, she said, how do you store all of your ideas and past program materials? Great question. So I already sort of showed a little bit of what I do. So like going to the farm, K1, I did it at FWE, Spring 2015, Francis Willard Elementary when I taught there. I did it at WES, Woodstock Elementary School, where I taught in the spring of 2019. So if I've done this theme before, I put on there where I did it and what I did, and then inside I put copies of all the songs we've done. If we have digital songs, like if there's a digital copy of a song, like an accompaniment track or something, I add that on a CD or whatever. If there's a program for the concert, if I've printed out like the names of the kids and the songs and whatever, I put any documentation, anything that I think I might want to use again or need to use again, I put in here and I keep it later. And I put that in a file folder and I put it in, my file cabinet so that I can pull that out and use that. So I'm not reinventing the wheel every time that I try and do a concert. So I store all that here and reuse it 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 as much as possible. And I find that like, even though it's like, oh, I did this for K1, like you can sometimes reuse and redo for a different grade. You can do it for, you could, the way you adapt or change things can give you more options too. So I try and save and reuse as much as possible. Okay, a couple different kind of concert. I'll talk about that really quickly before I start talking about promoting. So like, since I just said like variety in concerts and things, I think that there are a couple like main performance sort of things. So there's like the old school type performance where it's just the kids stand and they sing, or they stand and they perform, and they do something for parents, something that they have prepared and done. And that might be something like Lion King Jr., Annie Jr. It might be a musical. It might be like a stand and sing, something on the riser, so it's more riser based. It might be like a John Jacobson style musical, or like some people call them canned musicals, where it's like a musical with a script with suggested songs that you can purchase from West Music or Music K8, something like that. Or it could be just something that you've put together, that you've created, but more of like a performance thing where you're standing and sharing with parents. A lot of us grew up doing those concerts, and that's what we have in our head, and that's what a lot of the parents of our students have in their head. So if you do something different, you sort of have to help sort of educate parents and help students get ready for the performance. So like the next sort of thing that you might do instead, you could do an informants. And informances are less like, here's this thing that we prepared and polished, and more like, here's what we're already sort of doing in our classroom, and here's, we might put a new spin on it or change something a little bit, but it's mostly like the songs that we do in our classroom. We're not like cutting the curriculum for 7 weeks and just doing this other thing that doesn't really relate necessarily. It's like we're taking what we're already doing and we're integrating that and performing that for you and sharing that with you and sharing sort of the reason behind it as we do it. Some people also even do like an in-class sharing where like they invite all the parents for Mrs. Jones's first grade class to come in and sit in during Miss Jones's just music class, and instead of a performance they have an in-class sharing where maybe they just do a couple songs they would normally do and then they do like a couple things with the parents for the parents. That's cool if that works for you and for your school. For a lot of us that doesn't work. Maybe when I taught in Georgia and I had 1,200 kids, no, I would not be able to do that, and just the scheduling, the idea of scheduling all that stresses me out. But I know that some people do that and they love it. So it's really just how you want to share with parents, and how that works best for you and your school community, as you think about what you're going to share. One of the things I'll say is that I try and have a variety of things. So like by the time my students leave 5th grade, I want them to have done some sort of like performance musical sort of a thing where there are at least lines. Maybe there are costumes, maybe sets, I don't know. But something more of like an old school performance, or maybe like a performance that they will eventually do if they, do music or theater or something in middle or high school. So something sort of more traditional performance-y thing. I also want them to have like a riser concert where they stand and they sing from the risers, and maybe they do riser choreography or something, but it's mostly like classes hanging out of the risers. Because again, that's sort of a traditional thing, sort of more like a choral experience. And so I want them to feel that too. I also want them to have a concert where they do a lot of moving, either where they perform for parents in front of the parents, or maybe we do like a family folk dance night. And so that's a time where they share for parents and then share with parents. I'll talk more about that later. And I want them to have something that's more like, these are just the fun songs we know. Usually that's kindergarten or 1st grade or 2nd grade, where it's songs that kids already know and we pull them out and we reuse them in the concert. Or, maybe we adapt things a little bit, but it's usually more of like based around a theme, based around an idea, but less like crazier performance, like big sets, big whatever. It's a little bit less of that. So I like them to have a variety of those things. I want them to have several different things. If all we did was like, speech, like lines and costumes and stuff, that would be overwhelming for me, and it'd probably be a lot for them too. If it were all just riser concerts or all just performances, that might, again, not get everything. I want kids to have a good variety by the time they leave. And so that's why every year I try and do something a little bit different. So like if you're in 3rd grade and you go to 4th grade, you're not going to have the exact same experience. It's going to be just a little different. Variety for us, variety for kids, variety for parents. How do you promote those concerts? Okay, well, I have a lot of thoughts. I think photo ops are great. So I try and have like a photo op, like either a bulletin board to stand in front of, or something interactive, or maybe goggles or things you hold, or something where parents can take pictures, like at parent-teacher conferences or at open house at the beginning of the year. And usually on that bulletin board or whatever, it'll be like, alien themed or space themed or ocean themed or whatever. And then it'll say March 25th, like 6 p.m. or whatever. Just sort of remind parents like, hey, take this fun photo. Oh, it's great. We're going to take it with the big crazy glasses in front of the thing that says, don't forget 2nd grade concert. And, so I like having those sort of moments out at like parent teacher conferences or, open house. If it's the next show coming up, I think all of those are great. I also think you can use bulletin boards to get kids excited. So like my next big show for my younger grades is based around the zoo. So I shared a little bit about one of these last week, but I have these rhythm bulletin boards. This one has animals from the ocean. So shark, and it says ta, rest. Pink flamingo, toddy, toddy. The last one I said was ocean. This one is zoo, black panther. It really should be pink panther because look, the background is pink, but oh well. Monkey, ta, ta. Zookeeper, ta, toddy. Get to another one. A lot of ta and ta rest. Oh, baby bunny, toddy, toddy. So I have all these different words that are animals from the zoo, elements from the zoo. And so I'm going to put this out in the hallway, all these different things, and then also say like, Groovy Zoovy coming soon, April 9th or whatever, so that as kids walk by, they see, oh, it's the zoo stuff. That's what we're doing. Oh my gosh, when is it? So that they're thinking about it, talking about it. If parents come through, they'll see it too. So I like to put up bulletin boards that are like musical and informative, but also on theme. So this one's actually going up this week in my school because our zoo concert is coming up. I also like to do countdowns, and my old principal used to make fun of me for this, and I was like, but parents are showing up. So if you have a school where like you don't get a lot of participation from parents, or kids don't come to the concerts, or it's at least if you can let them know about it. Like, you can't control whether they come or not, but as long as they know about it, then they have the opportunity to show up. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to put out like a countdown, and so I have these huge numbers that are printed out, one number to a page. So 1, 2, 5, right? Huge numbers. And what I like to do is on the wall, so I'm not like stapling or taping every day, I will put up a sheet protector, and then every day I can slip in the 1 or the 2 or the 3, and I do a big countdown to the concert. 7 days to the concert, 3 days to the concert, 1 day to the concert, 25 days to the concert, or whatever, just so that kids are like thinking about planning ahead to come to the concert. Then I have some of these things printed out. My principal always made fun of me for this. Concert this week to put out on the front door, in the yard, wherever. I used to actually have yard signs I would put out, and one of the secretaries at my old school was like, "Are you putting out political signs?" Like, I was like, "No, it's not election season, number 1, and number 2, look at the sign. It says like concert this week." I have pre-printed these signs that say tonight, 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 to remind kids come to the concert. I have printed out the word tomorrow, TOMOR, all separate pages that I can put again. If I put it by the bulletin board that I have advertising the show, it gets kids excited. Or put in the hallway that they live on. So having those signs really helps kids remember, helps parents remember, helps people remember. I also send out emails. I try and send out one to parents about a month out from the show, one about 2 weeks out from the show, or a week out from the show. Emails, bulletin boards. I ask teachers to put the information in their weekly newsletter. I ask the principal to send it out. We put it on our website. I mean, as long as parents know, then they know. Like, you can't get them to come, but like, as long as they know, that's due diligence. That's what you need to do. Okay, so those are all things that I have already pre-printed out, ready to go, that I've used for years and years. I think the countdown is my favorite part. I use that most of the time. At the show, I like to have a slideshow going. So let me see if I can show you sort of what I do in that show. Let me see if I can pull it up here. I've shared about this once before, but as parents are filing into the gym, I have... let me see if I can pull it up here. Whoops, sorry. Let me get that. There we go. So as parents are filing into the gym, they're seeing this up on the screen. It's just on a rotation on its own. This was when I taught at Woodstock Elementary School. Woodstock Elementary School presents Growing Up, featuring first grade. And then the next slide says, find pictures of kids in action on Instagram at WES Wildcat Music. So that was the Instagram we had. Then the next slide says, also find us on our Twitter. It had our Twitter handle. Okay, again, just trying to close the loop so parents have a way to connect with us. Another slide, growing up. There's clip art of a kid growing up from a baby to an adult, featuring first grade. This is sort of like so parents have pictures for their scrapbooks if they want. Thanks to Woodstock PTA for providing the amazing speakers you're listening to right now, because I usually had music playing before the show. These speakers are used for Pack Pride, assemblies, field day, and lots more, and then there are arrows pointing to where the speakers would be. My principal always loved when I put this slide up. Please check the lost and found before you leave tonight. Let's see what else. Another growing up slide. Okay. You want to join and support us? Here's my donors choose. Okay, so that's another way to connect with parents and grandparents and adults. If you're interested in joining the PTA, well, the PTA had just provided these huge, amazing speakers. So, of course, I'm going to advertise for them as well. Guess what? Here's another picture growing up. How exciting. Okay, and then I have the Twitter handles for other teachers at my school. And then I love this one. Donate your unused musical instruments to the Woodstock Elementary Music Room. So it's, just, again, just ways to connect with parents when they're actually at your show or waiting, because like maybe there's time before your show starts to... for them to sit and whatever. And so if they're sitting in the gym scrolling on Facebook, why not have a scrolling thing up there for them to like just follow your Insta or, whatever. So they have a way to connect with you later or sign up for PTA or whatever. Like, well, guess what? They're literally a captive audience. So now is the time to try and tell them about these things. So I usually do that before the show. During the show to make connections with parents. Again, you're not just teaching students, you're teaching the parents. What does music look like nowadays? What is music education like? What is that? How does that manifest in the classroom? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So during the show, I keep the like PowerPoint going, and behind the students, I might put the name of the song, or if we're doing a certain song, I might put like, here's the standard that's addressed by this song, so it's up on the screen or whatever. Or maybe I say like, sometimes it'll be like, here's the song inspired by blah, 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 or this lesson we did. I might put up pictures of what the kids looked like when they were doing that lesson, or student examples so that parents can see it better. Like maybe we based part of our song around a rhythm or a poem or something that a kid came up with. I'm going to put up their work up on the thing so parents can see that. So using your screen as you're going to sort of give parents that connection and let them see more like literally into your classroom, like see the photos. I think that's really valuable. And so I use my projector and all of that as the show is going, again, to make connections with parents. You can also list standards and things on your concert program if you want. If you think parents will be interested and excited to look that up, you can have that on there. Speaking of programs, I don't like making or printing them because I feel like it takes so much time and so much stress. But I do make them because I know some parents are like, I want it for the scrapbook, or I want it for whatever. I want to send it to grandma. Okay, so I make them. I also I make a PDF of that program and email it out to all the parents, usually before the show, so that they can see it, have it in case they want it. I also have less printed copies, and now I do more QR codes, which is those little black, if you don't know what a QR code is, those little black sort of like pixelaty weird things that if your phone scans it, it can take you to a website. I like using QR codes because then I'm printing less on paper, but then also parents can have their own digital copy of the thing if they want. So the QR, which stands for quick response, is something that a lot of people use nowadays, and so they're used to it. And creating QRs is really not hard. Just do a quick YouTube of how to do it. It's very, very simple. But I like to create the QR so that parents can go and get a digital copy of that concert program or connections to us or whatever. Makes it really easy. Okay, so I'm going to jump over to folks' questions now. So if you have questions and you don't hear me run through them here on the questions people have already submitted in the last week, please put your questions in the chat for either Instagram or Facebook. And Instagram, I'm so sorry, we lost you for a minute. My phone was being weird, but I hope everything's back and you can hear and see okay. But if you have questions or comments, drop those in the chat. Okay, planning. Let's talk first about planning. How do you really plan out and prepare a musical from start to finish? Whoa, that's going to be like 5 hours worth of talking, so I'm not going to go quite into that. But at the beginning of the video, I talked a little bit about how I get started. I sort of just choose a theme for next year. I start planning and preparing and pulling all that stuff together. If I find a song I really like, I make a copy and I pull it and I put it in a little folder for next year's concerts. And then as you go, you adapt and change and make, okay, well, we're doing an ocean theme, so we can all wear, ocean colors, or we can wear fish colors. We can make fish masks. We can, you start thinking, but the more you have set aside for next year, the more that as you just casually find things, you can pull it all together. I feel like if you wait until a month before, 2 months before, 3 months before the show, you're in a panic of what am I going to do? So I like to think way far out so that as I'm planning, I can pull those ideas. And I'd rather have more ideas than not enough. So I try and pull as many things as I can. And then as I'm starting to prepare songs, I start pulling out things that I can't use. That was not a start to finish answer, but that's part of it. And we'll talk a little bit more as we go. I see my classes... Oh, that first question was from Brittany. The next one's from Jody. I see my classes for a week at a time, then don't see them for 2 weeks. How do you keep students fresh for the performance? Okay, I'm just going to go with that, and then we're going to come back to the next one. Okay, so as I'm teaching a song, I try and teach like a couple songs at once. I see my students twice a week for 30 minutes, which is amazing. I used to see my students at my old school once every 7 school days for 45 minutes. Not as easy. So a couple ways you can do that. I like to teach a couple songs at once. So like maybe I teach the first half of one song for the first half of class and another half of another song in the second half of class. So we're never just like learn a whole song and then don't touch it for 5 weeks as we learn the other ones. It's like we learn a couple at a time, and then so, maybe over the course of 2 class periods you learn 2 songs, but you learn half the one time, half of the other one for the first time, and then you learn the other half. You learn another part. So you sort of spread it out over a couple classes so that it stays fresh, because then you can review what you learned and add on as you go. I also like to, maybe I've done that for several weeks and I'm in week 4 or 5 of preparing. Then sometimes like the first thing we'll do as we walk into class is just run that song from week 1. We'll just run it really quick, and then we'll move on to something new, just to keep everything sort of fresh in their memory, keep them current on what it is we're doing. Another way to think about it is how can you take those songs and sort of break them up. So when I taught at the school where I saw kids once every 7 school days, I would do a concert. It would have about 6 or 7 songs, depending on the grade level, 5, whatever. It depends on the grade level and what it is they're doing. But sometimes I would do like everyone sings the first one, everyone sings the last one. And then maybe the second and third songs are performed by just 3 homerooms. And maybe the third and fourth songs are just by 3 other homerooms. That school I had sometimes 10 homerooms. It was a big school. So, but it meant that like everyone starts and ends together. But maybe, we have like a featured class for one song. So then it's like not everybody does every single song, but like we're all involved. It's all on theme. And then you can have some variety there too. Like one does a thing about this, one does a thing about this. It sort of breaks it up. So then you're not, trying to smush every song into every kid. And you can spend a little bit more time on each song that you teach. That takes more planning, but it's definitely valuable if you can make that work. So a couple ideas there. Do you do separate grade level concerts? Yes. At my school, yes. And I'll just say, before I jump into all these questions, there is no exact science or formula, and what's right for one school is not necessarily right for another school. So just if I'm like, yeah, this is how I do it, doesn't mean that like that's how you need to or should do it. It's sort of up to you. Okay, so I do per grade level, and that means just about 4 homerooms. I used to do it at a school where I did 2 grade levels at a time, and that would be about 6 or 7 homerooms, I'm trying to remember. When I taught at the ginormous school, I did 1 grade level at a time. Sometimes I'd have 10 homerooms, and so that's a lot. It just sort of depends on what your school can handle and is used to. At my very first school, I did 2 grade levels at a time, and we didn't have any sort of performance space at my school. None. And so what I would do is I would have the concert at the middle school that my kids would eventually like go to, like our neighborhood middle school. And so it meant a couple things. One, they were already previewing the space that they're gonna go to. So the principals of the middle school liked that, because it meant that like my kids were like already figuring out where they're gonna go, and then it's not as scary because they like know what it's like. So we would go to that middle school and have our concert there. That gave us more space to perform. It was a pain in the butt to schlep everything over to that middle school, but it was better. It was ADA compliant. It was like a nice space. And if we planned it far enough ahead, we could rent out that space. I tried it for a year or 2 at the high school. That was harder to book the space, to book their auditorium. The middle school was easier and closer, actually. So, but that was what I did at that school. At my current school, because let's see, this was Renee, and she said, how do all the parents fit? Well, it's tight. If you do it in your own gym, like there's not always a lot of room. So you have to be creative. But sometimes that means using another space. Sometimes that means we do it outdoors. Sometimes that means, it just depends on what it is you're doing. Do you need technology? Do you need to be inside? Do you need to be in your space? All those are considerations you have to make before you can make those choices. What do you do with students? This is Megan. What do you do with students between when they arrive or report for the concert and the time to perform? They're so excited and have so much nervous energy. I've tried a movie, but that was only partially successful. I don't like to have them running wild. Agree, Megan. I don't like having them running wild. So at my school, it's an expectation that the homeroom teachers come for the concert. So at my old school and at my current school, when kids report, they show up to their homeroom or a designated corral space or whatever. Maybe it's the lunchroom or whatever. But their job is to find their homeroom teacher. So their homeroom teacher for me checks. I give them a roster. They check in the students so that I know who is there and who's not. And honestly, that's not for me like accountability of like, oh, this kid wasn't there, they're knocking off a grade. I don't care. That is not a consideration for me. But it's more like when I come to pick up that class to go into the gym, I want to know like, is my lead speaking part missing, or is this important speaking part missing? So having the teacher sort of check that off is cool. But if they meet up in their homerooms or a designated corral room, like at my old school, it used to be like, show up to the computer lab. You're not going to go to your homeroom. We don't want to mess with that. But show up at the computer lab. And that's where you meet your other classmates. So they get excited, sure. But some of those classroom teachers are like, I'm okay with them being excited. Some of those classroom teachers are like, get on Lexia on the computer lab. Some of those classroom teachers are like, I have a movie. So, but the classroom teachers expect that they're going to have those kids for 15 or 20 minutes. And it is sort of like a babysitter moment. But we're all in this together. So anyway, so that's what my kids do. I don't let them go to the gym or do anything crazy or like hang out with their parents. And I usually say like, you need to be here at 6:15 for our 6:30 concert. 6:15. We will not open the doors until 6. If you're here before that, you can't get in. But like the classroom teachers report at 6 or whatever, or 6:10 or whatever. So, but it gives us a little bit of time to prepare and prep for that. Okay, what role do homeroom teachers play in your concerts? Alexandria just asked. Oh, I just mentioned that. They help corral kids before. Another thing that I've done, and planning doing again this year, so like we're basing one of our concerts around the book Commotion in the Ocean. And the idea is like you read a couple pages and then sing a song that matches. So my homeroom teachers are going to come up and read a couple pages as if it's like a read aloud. And like, I have pretty cool homeroom teachers who are like cool with this. But the really amazing thing is that like when the kids see their teacher, they're like, it's Mrs. Jones. They get so excited that like their homeroom teacher is doing this with them. And so it's always fun if your teachers are willing and if it's a possibility to sort of loop them in and make them a part of the show. I once did a concert where my librarian came out and did that, where she like read a couple pages, we sang a song, read a couple pages, she sang a song. We had this fun banter. It was so much fun. That also meant that like I didn't have to have kids coming up and doing speaking parts, because the speaking parts were between me and the librarian. It was a younger grade, like kindergarten or first grade, so it was great that like they didn't have to learn lines, I didn't have to assign them, but we still had sort of that time in between songs. And the librarian loved it. She was like so excited. I don't think she'd ever been asked to do anything like it. She was nervous, but it was amazing. Had like this awesome picture book and even had other things like printed out in there. It was so cool. So I try and loop them in as much as possible. Kelsey asks, effective transitions between groups when you don't have a separate backstage area. It depends on what sort of a show you're running. If it's featured group, instruments or something where like kids have to switch spots, I try and do like a transition song. And so like if we're doing the zoo concert, maybe you have a poem about animals, Little Bo Peep, maybe then like as you say it, kids transition. A song or a poem or something, or maybe movement music. Maybe we're doing a song about dinosaurs, and then as we're transitioning, I turn on the theme for Jurassic Park. I don't know. But finding like a musical way to connect so that like it's not just audience talking and getting crazy and then having to be quieted down. If you have some sort of like poem or thing or something like that, that's always really helpful. If you have like a skit going on or like speaking parts, that also distracts the audience from the transitions, but you can find lots of cool ways to do that. I think like a spoken poem with movement is super cool. And the more you teach that, the easier that'll be. Okay, let's see. Talking in the risers and running large practices. Okay, great question. Large practices. I usually try and do 4 days of practice before a show with the entire grade level. The first day, I have very low expectations. The expectation is you get in the gym, you find your spot, you sing all the songs if possible. That's it. Like my 4th and 5th grade concerts this year. This is how it went. That's the first day. Just get in the gym, find your spot, sing through the songs, maybe twice, figure out how to get off the stage or out of the space or whatever. Second day, add in, if you have movement or transitions or things, start adding more of that. Third day, props and speaking parts. Fourth day, run through it. And then that's it. But like every day, it's like what, like a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. That way, you're not like, okay, the first day, okay, everyone's on the risers, and here's what we're gonna do exactly, and then here come the speaking parts, and don't forget this. It's like once, like they just come in on the first day, come and find your spot, sing your thing, be done. Okay, cool. The second day, you're gonna do that same thing, except you add a layer. Third day, you come and do the same thing, add a layer. I don't expect like we're gonna do the full exact thing the very first day and only make it through halfway. I want to get through all the songs, but like less complexity than as we go, if that makes sense. Emily said, I have a concern about equity and performances. We have lots of kids who can't attend evening performances because they don't have a ride, and lots of families can't come to during the day performances. Great question. That was my first school. A lot of kids couldn't make it to the concert. Maybe their parents are, working a job or don't have a car, or they just can't make it. I don't know why, but it doesn't matter. For me, I always encourage kids to come to the after-school performance, but I don't require it. Because at all my schools, I've always had an opportunity to present for the school, like to do for a school-wide performance or something like that, or like an assembly, basically, and they get to perform for the school. And if kids are in school that day, then they get to do the performing, which is great. If you're able to record that or share that, cool. I know a lot of people do that, so you can simulcast that. There are easy ways to do that. I'm live on Facebook and Instagram right now. It does not take a lot of fancy equipment. You could use fancy equipment, but you can go live on YouTube. There are a lot of ways to do that. So for me, a lot of times it's like all kids perform during the day. If you can make it to the night performance, great. But I'm not going to like, if you don't come, you're getting a D. That's not up to a 7-year-old. They can't control whether they can get there or not. I always encourage it, but never require it. Carter responded actually to that question. Not a perfect solution, but you can stream performances and put them up. He said on a private YouTube channel. That's a great thing, because it's not just out there for anyone to see. But if you have if you make the video private or unlisted, actually, then you can send the link out to parents or grandparents or whoever. And if they have the link, they can find it, but they can't just like search through YouTube. And that's great for safety of your students, for copyright reasons, all sorts of stuff. But the having it online is cool if that's an option. Okay, let's see. I'm going to try and get to as many of these as we can. Seeing kids 45 minutes on a 6-day rotation. I feel like I need to start concert material in September for an April performance. Yes. Okay, I talked a little bit about this, how like you can sort of plan it so like you teach part of a song, like the first half of one song one day, and maybe the second half of another song that same day. And then the next day you teach like another verse or another thing, and you sort of layer it. So you're not just teaching one whole song one day, you're teaching a couple things, and then you can sort of, I guess, pace it out so that you're doing a little bit at a time. You can also do the thing, like I said, where if I have a big rotation with like maybe 6 or 7 or 10 homerooms, we all do the first song together, we all do the last song together, maybe we do a song together in the middle, but then I might have like a song by a featured homeroom or 2 homerooms together. And so then they can do that special song that's just their own, which means I don't have to teach it to everyone, but I can teach it to like half the group. So maybe we do everything together, the first one together, half the grade does one song, half the grade does another song, we do a whole song together, half the grade does one song, so then really you're only teaching 4 songs out of 7 to every class. It makes it a little bit easier. It's just one idea about how you might pace it and change things so that you can make preparation a little bit easier. It's hard for specialists because people don't realize, like, well, yeah, you see them every other day, or you ever see them every few days. Well, then you have spring break, or maybe you have snow days, or maybe you have some weird snafu, someone's on a field trip. There was one time at my old school where I saw kids once every 7 school days where I didn't see one homeroom for a month. Like, they were just, stuff happened, and they were, so it's like, it's hard for you to plan, but you can do some of those things that make that a little easier. Someone said, do you include instruments on your performances? If so, how do you handle practices and on-stage procedures for that? Great question. I try and use instruments as much as possible. It's easier if like you can have the kids in one place and the instruments off in another place, like on another, like in front of the stage or off on the side. So then like as you need them, you can go get them. If they're in the way, that's a pain in the butt. So if possible, move them to sort of a new place. Like I said before, we do a transition song. So when it's like Miss Jones's homeroom is on the instruments, but then they're going to switch with Miss, Morrison's class or whatever. As they switch, there's like a song that they can do as they switch, or a poem they can speak while they switch, so you can just quickly go to your place. Practicing the procedure for that, before we ever get into the gym as a whole group, in my classroom, I have all the kids off on the side, I have the instruments set up the way they're going to be, and then I say, okay, here's what's going to happen. As you're saying the poem, you got to go find your spot. And we practice the transition. So we say the poem, we go find our spot, we don't play our song, we transition off. And then we try that again, transition on, transition off. So they know that like how it needs to be sort of fluid and quick. It doesn't take a lot of time to do that, but they remember that. And so you might also then, once they're all as a whole grade level there, you might just do the transitions between the classes and not do the songs in between. Just do the transitions and then maybe do it again with transitions. But it's just a way to, again, stair step them in, scaffold that in so that they're used to those transitions and know what it feels like. Okay, someone said, songs they already sing. How do you balance performance prep with teaching regular lessons and standards? How do you sort of plan all that? So I like to use concerts that are just songs we already do in our classroom, but maybe a souped up or different version. And someone else, Morgan, said, I know you've talked about building lower grade performances around songs they already sing. Most of those songs are really short. I'm curious how you extend the songs and use a lot of them to get a whole program. Okay, here's an example from the show I'm about to do. About the zoo. The song goes, wake up, you sleepy heads, and go and find the cattle. Wake up, you sleepy heads, and go and find the cows. Sorry, I did not tune this beforehand. And then the response is, the cows are lost. The sun is warm. I think I'll wait till they come home. Now I'll go to sleep. So the way we do this in the classroom is I sing it as the like, wake up, you sleepy heads, and go and find the cattle. And then they all get to sing, the cows are lost, the sun is warm. I think, like the kid being like, but I'm going to go take a nap. The cows will come home on their own, right? That's sort of like a back and forth, sort of a call response song. Silly, fun, 20 seconds. Right? So then as we're getting ready for the performance, I'm going to make this about the zoo. Wake up, you sleepy heads, and go and find the monkeys. Wake up, you sleepy heads, and go and find the monkeys. And then they go, the monkeys are lost. The sun is warm. And then the next step would be like, okay, this half of the class, you get to be the angry adult. And the other half of the class, you get to be the sleepy kid. And we go back and forth, we try that. Again, it's just like call and response, giving kids different parts, singing different things, dividing the group. And so then what we're going to do for the concert is I have 4 homerooms for this grade level. So the first time, we're all going to sing, wake up, you sleepy heads. And then one class is going to go, the cows are lost, the sun is warm. And they're going to fall asleep. The other 3 homerooms that will then sing, wake up, you sleepy heads. And then that next time, 2 homerooms will do the kid part. We'll sing it all again. Then 3 homerooms will do the sleepy kid part. Well, the last class left standing and me will sing, wake up, you sleepy heads. And then all 4 will pretend to go to sleep. And then hopefully by that point, the parents will be ready. They're going to sing, wake up, you sleepy heads. I'm going to turn around and look at the audience. So that song that takes like 20 seconds, we're going to do it about 4 or 5 different times. It's going to feel fresh because every time another homeroom is falling asleep. And they're just taking the sleepy part. And then the parents get to join in. And so it's taking that song and finding a way to adapt it, to change it, to make it more interesting. There are lots of songs you can do that with. So like maybe you have a song and you add a new verse, where you add a new character or something that's not originally part of the song, but you add that in to extend the song, to make it a little bit different. I love doing that with animal songs because if it's a song about a cow, maybe then you take that situation of that song and then make it about a horse or make it about a whatever. And I love when kids can like mimic the look or the sound of that animal. Again, it just adds a little bit more, and it lets you sort of extend that song so it's longer and more exciting and more interesting for parents and for kids. Okay, I'm going to talk real quick. There are lots of other great questions, but I'm going to run out of time. I want to talk about folk dance because I'm doing that show next week. So someone said Alex said, I'm doing a folk dance share in the few weeks with second grade. How did you get all the parents to fit? What dances did you do? Did parents join in with the students? Did students have speaking parts? How did you manage transitions? Okay, all great questions in like 3 minutes I have. Okay. Again, my expectation for concerts is 1 year we do sort of a musical. 1 year we do a stand and sing. 1 year we do something else. And so one of those years is a folk dance night. And the way that works for my parents, I've done it a couple different ways. This year we're doing it outside. The first time we did it in a big gym. We had a big gym that was good for students. You could do your gym, cafeteria, any big open space. And so what we did that time, what we're going to do now is 2 or 3 songs we demo for the parents. So like harder songs that would be really tricky to teach in a short amount of time, but we've had time to practice. 2 or 3 songs we demo. And then 3 or 4 or 5 songs, we ask the parents to come join us, dance with us. If you have a really big gym, easy. Or you could borrow your high school's gym if you need a bigger gym, or a middle school gym, right? But I don't have sets. I don't have speaking parts. It's just a folk dance night. And part of me when I first did it was like, but what about do they need speaking parts? Do we need whatever? No, it's the whole point is we're having folk dance together. It's not part of the folk dance tradition to like have a speaking part in between, to like have a dialogue. We don't need that. And so it's more like these are 2 or 3 songs that we do, and then inviting parents to come in and do some easier ones with us is really so much fun. So like for this concert, it's an international folk dance concert. So we're doing 3 trickier songs. We're doing a version of a Bhangra dance. We're doing the Galopede from England, and we're doing Las Bastrings, or I don't know how, I need to look up pronunciation for that, from Canada. So like one in a circle where you have to have partners and do more complex stuff. One in a long way set where you have partners and do, again, more complex stuff. And then the Bhangra, which is like a lot of movement. Those we're going to demo for the parents, and then we're going to bring the parents in. And what I'm doing at this school, because we don't have the space for all parents, we're doing it outside on the soccer field, and we're even making it easier than that. 2 of the classes are going to go in their homerooms. They've done research projects about different countries from around the world, so they're going to take their parents in and sort of do a gallery walk for about 15 minutes. And during that time, so 2 homerooms are going to go do the gallery walk. The other 2 homerooms are going to grab their parents, and we're going to do a couple dances, and then we switch spots. And so the kids who are doing the gallery walk come do the dance with their parents. The kids who are dancing go to the gallery walk, and then we're done. So that means that then I only have to teach a few songs, a few dances, and I can reuse them. It sort of extends the length of the concert, but it's like 2 homerooms get it, and the other 2 homerooms get it. And I find that like with family folk dance night, parents are just so excited about getting to like do this with their kids. This is not something they get in any other format, and it's just fun, easy. Throw in a line dance that the parents are going to maybe like. We're doing the Pata Pata from South Africa, which parents are going to love. Do Sasha, because kids love at their parent. There are like 2 or 3 things that are just super fun and super easy that any adults should be able to pick up and do. If a 3rd grader can do it, they can do it too. So find some fun and easy songs and just invite them in. I find that parents, they jump in, they make it work, or they can stand and watch, and that's okay too. But a couple that we demo, and then several that we do with them. Okay, so a couple closing final thoughts. First, you have to teach your parents in your school community. A lot of us come in with this baggage or this preconceived notion of what a concert is or what a performance is. And so if we're going to say to parents, well, music class is more than just singing, then in our concerts, we need to do more than just singing. It needs to be, you need to show the improvisation that we did. We need to show some of the compositions that students did. We need to have more movement. We need to include more instruments. We need to have more sound stories. Like, you can pull those things from your classroom and do them and share them with parents, that's okay. Because you're teaching parents, here's what we do, here's why we do it, here's the cool thing, here's what we added on. Hey, this is a canon. You can take those things and share those with parents, and that is valuable and cool. But you need to teach them why you're doing it. Because if they come in and are like, well, they aren't standing and singing, why not? There are so many other things we can do, like this folk dance night. We're doing folk dance from around the world because it's International Festival, and folk dance is a huge part of music making. And dance from around the world is so linked to music making. So, you're teaching parents as you go, and that's important. And then give everyone grace. Give yourself grace if things don't work out perfectly. Give grace to the kids who can't make it or do make it but are not wearing a costume, or who do make it but forget their lines. Or give grace to the homeroom teachers who can't come because there's a soccer game or something, which happens. And give grace to your administrators who are super stressed all the time. But this adds another thing. Everyone needs grace, especially you, especially the custodians, especially the kids. But give them grace. Because it's not Broadway. It's not the Olympics opening ceremony. It's not the Kennedy Center. It's a 3rd grade performance at Prairie Ridge Elementary. So I try not to stress out so much. I try and do the best I can, make the best plans I can, and then just have as much fun as I can. Because that's going to create great memories for kids and make them want to make music later. Okay, I ran over. There are more questions we didn't get to. If you feel like this was fun and valuable, please send me an email or leave me a comment like, hey, look, you could talk more on such and such, or I want to hear more about blah, blah, blah. And I'll try and add more of that as we go. But this was sort of off the normal. I usually talk about lesson plans, so this is a little bit different. But if you're like, hey, this was great and thanks, or no, this was terrible, go back to what you're doing. Feedback is helpful. So anyway, if you have some thoughts about that, let me know. Otherwise, I hope I'll see you next week for another Musical Mondays video. Thanks so much for coming along with me. Instagram shut down weirdly 10 minutes in, but you're back, so hooray. Anyway, thanks everyone. Have a great night. I'll see you next time.